Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode. On this podcast, we explore all the topics that are of interest to you as professionals at this intersection of public health and entrepreneurship. My name is Dr. Charlotte Huntley, and I am very excited that you've decided to join me on this episode. I'm a public health entrepreneur. I have well over 20 years of experience in healthcare and public health, and I've supported a lot of entrepreneurs along the way. Now, I've also been podcasting since 2017 and absolutely love this platform for connecting with community and sharing information. Now, on this topic, we're going to talk about the perspective or lens of public health entrepreneurs. I'm going to ask you a series of thought provoking questions. So just prepare yourself. It's by design, a little strategic maneuver here, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. Now, we are most familiar with our own journey, our own cultures, communities. As entrepreneurs, do we ever think about the challenges that others face who may be similar or different than what we do as in our own community? So, in other words, do you ever think about our international entrepreneurial colleagues? Right. So, that's where we're going with this episode. I want you to think about, like I said, a list of questions here, but there are a few things that have happened to me that have really opened my eyes, and I sometimes say open the world to me. But aside from the way that I accomplished some of my education through online platforms, connected me with students, classmates around the world. The podcast platform, as I mentioned, I love this platform. It has allowed me to connect with people literally all around the world. Now, since 2017, when I started my very first podcast, after it wasn't even that long into it, I started receiving messages from people who were listening in countries that I'd never visited, and I was just really blown away by the way that people were finding the podcast, and we were able to connect. That continued, and it still continues today. When someone reaches out to me and they've been listening to the podcast and they tell me their stories, it's rewarding, humbling, but it's just eye opening for me. They'll tell me about their challenges. They'll tell me how they're similar or different to what I share on podcast episodes. I also worked remotely for a global organization that, I mean, had offices around the world. So my colleagues were literally in offices around the world, and we found very creative ways to connect and engage. And we had those regular, I'm using air quotes, regular conversations that you have sitting across the room from your colleagues in a physical office. Well, we had to find creative ways to connect, but we had those types of conversations. Where are you going this weekend? What are your plans? What are your holiday traditions? And, our holidays aren't all the same. So it was an opportunity to share about what we do here in the US and hear from what is happening in different parts of the world. The favorite foods. I remember having a conversation where many of us celebrated Christmas, and we talked about how our Christmas dinners looked very different from traditions. Cultures and traditions were very different. So those are just some of the things that started to open my eyes, and I've always embraced and been excited to learn about other countries and cultures, and try to keep an open eye, an open just mind really to things that I just have yet to discover. Realizing that the world really does exist far beyond my perception and my lens here in my local area. Think about the challenges an entrepreneur might face in a large global city like New York or Chicago or Los Angeles or Toronto or London or Tokyo, Beijing, Paris, or Hong Kong. I'd like to share just a few considerations for you, with you on this topic. And it's ahead of our next episode, which I'll tell you more about in just a moment. It can be considering some of these questions can be very expansive and eye opening for all of you, and allow an opportunity to explore a perspective that's just very different from maybe your normal view. Take the time to consider what you do, what you focus on, your the filter the topic through the global lens. For example, If you're a consultant that provides population health analytics and education on diabetes for rural communities in the US, all right, let's say that's you and that's your focus and that's how, who you serve. Then consider how that might be different in a global city like New York, or what about Tokyo? How might that be similar or different or both? Consider the public health consultant in Paris who has the same focus of diabetes in rural communities across France. Do you think your challenges as entrepreneurs would be the same or different or both? Probably all three, right? How have you, or better yet, have you engaged with entrepreneurs in a way that allows for these types of conversations so where you could actually get to know about what those challenges are with that entrepreneur on that level? I mean, have you engaged in that way before? My experience with this, going back to what I shared with you, with the way that I worked, kind of set the stage, and the way that my education was held, just by the set the stage for me to be open to these kinds of conversations and experiences. So my experience with this going into, I was able to go to the UK, and I'm trying to remember the exact time. I want to say end of summer, early fall of 2023. And I went to Manchester and I presented on topics of public health entrepreneurs, and I engaged with folks there, and the interest is high. Some of the challenges are very similar, but they're also very different. And I have engaged with this one particular colleague for years, and we've talked extensively about the similarities and the differences. And we have such a respect for these similarities and differences, and also for the ability to have these types of conversations, with using that sharing our each of us sharing our perspectives, but also that public health lens and that global public health lens in particular. So I just think it's very important for you to, if you've never considered it, this may feel very uncomfortable, but perhaps this is what you do all the time, and it's very second nature for you to always think this way, and that's wonderful. And it's also good to recognize that not everyone is quite that way. I would love for all of you listening to pair up with someone that you can build relationship with and really get to know and share this global entrepreneurial perspective, with this public health lens. I think that's an opportunity. And you may not just be able to jump into a conversation with someone. That takes a while, just like with any other relationship that you build. But you can certainly set an intention to have these kinds of conversations and to build these type of relationships. Now, I've teased it a few times today, but on our next episode, I'm bringing a guest. And it's our very first guest on this podcast, which I'm excited about. I promised in all the episodes building up that I would occasionally bring on a guest as an inspiration for you to hear these real examples of um, how people are leading the way on this entrepreneurial journey. And he will be joining us to share exactly that, his example, as well as his public health entrepreneurial lens and perspective, as he's in a very different country from where I'm hosting. So I'm excited for you to hear that conversation. And I know I teased it well, but it will be well worth it. So make a point of tuning in for our next episode. Now, we have some great resources in addition to this podcast to share with you at all stages of your entrepreneurial journey. So, right now, at the time of this recording, we are preparing exciting new resources specifically for those who are in very early stages or exploring this entrepreneurial path. This was not something I expected to create, but I am creating it because that is what a lot of people in my community are expressing interest in, and it's something we thought about. We penciled it in, but wasn't really sure we would do that. But here we are creating. So I know I'm teasing so much throughout this episode, but just make sure that you are checking your emails, the ones that we send out, because that's where you'll learn all about these offerings first. Now, if you are not receiving regular emails from us, then just visit our website, publichealthentrepreneurs.com, and that's entrepreneurs with an S. So, publichealthentrepreneurs.com. When you're there, scroll to the very bottom of the page, and you'll find a little microphone icon and a button that says subscribe. Just opt in and keep an eye on your inbox because all of these things that we're creating, like I said, the people that are subscribed and on our email list are the ones that hear about it first. Now, we also have an awesome mastermind group program that's best suited for established public health entrepreneurs. We are coming together in this online space and we gather in person for a 2-day retreat as well as our virtual online weekly meetings and activities. So, we've had some entrepreneurs come from all over the US and around the world, really. And we are just thrilled to connect and to be able to meet in person at these retreats. It's an exciting, rewarding, engaging, just a very rich program. And enrollment is only open twice a year in June and December. So I know this episode is being released at the very beginning of June. And if you're listening now and you're hearing about this for the very first time, you can find that on our website. But the enrollment is only open in June and December, and we only invite people who have submitted an application. So if this sounds like exactly what you've been looking for and you're interested, the best thing to do is apply from our website, through our website, and we will reach out to you when space is available during June and December. Okay. If you'd like to know more about the Mastermind Group program, then of course, publichealthentrepreneurs.com is our website. And you can just click on Mastermind from the menu, and there's a whole page that gives you all of the details and information, as well as a link to apply. Now, as we wrap up this episode, I'd like to ask you to help us spread the word about this podcast. And there are some easy ways to do that. You can just share directly from the podcast app that you are listening through right now, if you happen to be listening in one of the podcast apps. You can also share our website with a friend, publichealthentrepreneurs.com. And another way is to write a favorable review in Apple Podcasts. Now, I realize that takes a few extra steps, and not everyone is listening on Apple Podcasts. But if you are and you actually take those extra steps, I really appreciate you for doing so because it helps other people decide to tune in and check out the podcast. Now, whichever way you choose, I just appreciate you helping us spread the word about the podcast. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day.